to become more known nationally and what we want to highlight with that. And I'll just say it's really exciting because there's many of us on faculty who have been around a little bit longer, who have been advocating for this for years. And so we are officially a School of Social Work, and we're kind of talking about how do we become more known nationally for more students to come to our program. And one of the things that we're really trying to highlight that I think really does make us unique is that we tend to have smaller class sizes. We don't have this insane number of students. And so that tends to make it a little bit easier for students to get to know your faculty members. That's something that for those of us on the social work faculty is really critical to us. We really want our students to feel like they can come to us, reach out to us, talk with different things with us, process things. So just know that that's something that I'm not just passionate about, but your social work faculty are really passionate about. So if you ever have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. So we did the introductions. Thanks so much, everybody, for doing that. I like trying to start the recording after introduction. So if anybody's not comfortable, you don't have to feel like you're being recorded. So some goals for today is really talking about for supervisors, how do you begin working with your student? Maybe this is your first time supervising, maybe not. Maybe it's your first time supervising an NAU student or an MSW student. But just know we really want there to be a sense of community. And so for supervisors, I shared with students to feel comfortable reaching out to me. That is definitely the same approach that I have with my supervisors. I want you to know that you can reach out to me at any point if there's ever any concerns that you may have, and it could be performance concerns, it could be concerns about a student's overall well-being. Know that you can reach out to me. We really want there to be a supportive front for our students, and so the sooner we kind of address things tends to be the better the outcome. So we'll also be talking about educational and learning focus in terms of the field placement, and then, of course, reviewing logistics. And so we'll be talking about Sonia, which is our online platform that we use, where a lot of documentation is centralized for our field students. This is my second year using it, so I'm still learning it. And some faculty, it might be their third year, but we're still learning it. Um, We'll also go over an overview of the assignments that students have, and then also what we call sweep, which is the evaluation that supervisors will use to evaluate students' performance in the field in their internship. So, and if you wouldn't mind if everybody could just mute themselves, mostly just because we're recording, that would be helpful. I'm not sure how much it picks up on the recording. So Sonia, if you ever have issues with Sonia, the email is right here, the Social Work Field Education Office. Please email them. They are much more able and prepared to support you with any Sonia tech issues than I am. I wish I could say I'm a genius and pro with technology and Sonia, but I am definitely not your go-to gal when it comes to tech issues. So use the Field Education Office. Know that they are short-staffed right now. We have an opening that we're trying to fill, but it might take a little bit of time before they get back to you. They try to be pretty prompt with their responses, but be a little patient with them, give them some grace. Again, if it's been 48 hours, feel free to reach back out to them. So really, it's the web-based portal. I'll show some screenshots to kind of demystify it a little bit. For those of you supervisors who've used it before, you're probably better at it than I am. But if you haven't used it before, I'll do my best to review some of it. And then there's also a really great informational video on the Sonia homepage that you'll see linked here. So students, there's a video specifically for students to watch to help you get started with Sonia, and then there's a video specifically for supervisors to watch. I ask students to watch both of them. So the students one is about 20 minutes, supervisors about 13 to 15 minutes. Students, I really want you to watch both of them because your supervisors may have questions, and it would be a lot easier for them to ask you than to wait for a response from our field education office. So if you could kind of be the front line for that, that would be really helpful, I'm sure, for your supervisors. So please just watch both. But that they're linked right here. So definitely watch those as your first step after this orientation because it will help a lot. So this is what the homepage looks like on Sonia. Everybody should have been emailed this morning with your login credentials for the website. If you don't see that, check your junk mail. And if you still don't see it, email our social work field education office because that means something went wrong. Because everybody should have received that this morning, students and supervisors. I don't believe we have access for our task instructors. If you did get it, great, but in the past, we haven't been able to provide that for our task instructors. I think it's some type of logistics with the actual Sonia platform. So know if you're a task supervisor and didn't see that, that's okay. But definitely if you are the field supervisor, you should have received that. So this is what the homepage looks like. You'll see the supervisor training video is right here in the yellow towards the bottom of the page. Students yours is immediately under that. There's also the field education guides, there's a Sonia guide, and then just some helpful informational resources right there for you on the right-hand side, also under documents. Okay, so the biggest question we get from supervisors is how do I approve timesheets? So, students, you should be entering your time at your internship daily. Every single day you go to your internship, make your clock out procedure be putting your hours into Sonia because you might think, oh, I'll remember at the end of the week. You won't, more than likely, and that's not a flaw of yours. It's just because you have so much going on right now that a lot of times students forget. So we used to have students put it in at the end of the week, but I've learned from student feedback that a lot of times they just forget. And that's, again, not a flaw of the students, just because you have an obscene amount of things going on and a lot of things you're trying to juggle and manage at the same time. And that can get stressful and things get forgotten. So, students, please input your hours every day before you clock out, quote unquote, clock out from your internship. And so for our supervisors, this is what it will look like. You'll log in and then you'll click on this green tab. I think I have arrows showing here. Yep. You'll click on this green tab, it says students. It will come up with a list of all of your students. So some of you may have multiple. What you'll do is you'll click on the left-hand side right here where it will have your student's name. You'll click that student and that will then tell Sonia that's who you're wanting to review. And then trying to move my little Brady Box screens. You'll click on timesheets at that top right corner. So click on students, then click the student's name who you want to review their timesheets, and then you'll click timesheets. So then this is what it will look like. Once you click timesheets, it's going to pull up the student's name. You'll see all on the left-hand side, it's all the same student. This is a test student. So to have all of them reviewed, it will have every single hour that they've put in. It's about the sixth column over. It says duration. And then if you scroll all the way to the right, that's where it's going to show you the student submitted it. And it will have a section there for you to approve. So pull out my arrows again. So you'll click the hours you want to approve. If you want to click all of them at the same time, you can just click all of the boxes on the left-hand part of the furthest left column. Click all the ones that you want to approve, so you don't have to do them one by one. And then down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see where that two is. There's an approve button or resubmit. Please do not use the unapprove. It messes things up. I'm not tech savvy enough to explain why, but I know it messes things up, and our field office has asked that we not use that button. That's the no-no button. So only click on approve, or if you have questions about the student's hours or you notice they made a mistake, you can click the boxes that you want them to resubmit and you can click resubmit. Just don't click unapprove. So either approve or resubmit, please. Okay, so then for the assignments piece, so you'll click on students and then it will have the student's name and you'll click on the student you want to review. And then you'll click on forms. And then you'll click on view. So you'll click on students, click the student's name who you want to review. You'll see the forms tab, and then on the far right side, you'll see view, and that will pull up the assignment for you to review it. This is what it will look like once you click on that. So for example, here is the form on the top. It's their field student responsibility statement. That's one of the first assignments. It's due this Sunday. And so students have to complete that and they'll submit it and then it will then go to the supervisor. So on the right hand side, you'll see it will say completed mine, completed all. So it will tell you supervisors if you've completed yours. If it says 2 out of 2, that means you and the student has completed it. Same thing for students. It will tell you if you submitted it yet. And if it says 2 out of 2 where it says completed all, that means you and your supervisor have completed it. So it's kind of confusing. You would think that you would have to click documents. Don't click documents. It will get you nowhere. Just click on forms. The other thing that you can do is there's these two, if you see the green arrows, it says hide completed forms. You can uncheck both of those or you can check them. If you check them to hide completed forms, that's what I recommend. It will show you only the forms that you still need to sign off on. I think by default they are unchecked, and so that means you'll have to check them to hide everything. In the beginning, this won't be that big of a deal because there'll only be a couple forms, the student acknowledgement of responsibilities, maybe a couple of supervision forms. But after a while, it will become a lot because you'll have all of your supervision forms, everything, the learning agreement. And so I do recommend clicking hide completed, and that will show you what you still need to sign off on. Okay. So you can also click on My Details, and that will pull up for supervisors, that will pull up your details. If you are an offsite supervisor, you can upload a picture of yourself if you want for your student. If you're on site, you can do it too, but it's more helpful, I think, for students where their supervisor is offsite, especially if you're not doing Zoom calls for your supervision on a regular basis. It just helps the students feel a little bit more connected to you. And then always supervisors, when you sign in, your name should always be in this top right corner. So right now it says test field supervisor. It should have your name. If it doesn't, log out, which you'll see is the box with the arrow on the far right. Log out, log back in. If it still doesn't, contact our social work office right away. It means there was a glitch in something and they can get that fixed for you. But always make sure it has your information there because whatever you sign off on, that's what it's going to show up as being signed off or who signed off on it. Okay, so for students, this is your first assignment. It's going to be in Sonia. You put your name in, your agency name, and your supervisor. Basically, what it is saying, and read this in full, but it's saying that you understand the responsibilities of your field internship, of NAU as an intern, and also the NAU code or NAU, NASW code of ethics, and that you will follow that and adhere to it. So definitely do this. It's due by Sunday, so that means you have some reading to do. It's not difficult reading, so it's not like textbook heavy dry reading, but you do have some reading to do before you sign this off. And so again, it's due Sunday. Every assignment in my course will be due Sunday by midnight. They used to be due Friday, and I had a lot of feedback from students, especially those who work, saying that was a difficult timeline to meet. And so every assignment in your field course will be due Sunday by 11:59 Arizona time. So then you'll also have the learning agreement. So those of you who maybe took your BSW with us that didn't used to be online, now it looks a little different now that it's in Sonia. We used to use a Word document. Way back in the day, we used paper documents, but now it's all in Sonia. The main thing to keep in mind is as you work on it, click save quite frequently because you might get working and then Sonia will time out after 60 minutes. And if you don't click save, you lose everything, which with the learning agreement would be a pain to go back in and refill everything in. So just save quite a bit. This is the supervision log. They are due weekly. And so students, this is where you will fill in. You complete this, not the supervisors. You can do it together in supervision. That's probably best practice and the easiest way to make sure it gets done. You can even have it open at the supervisor screen or on a laptop, on your screen, wherever you meet. Probably best practice to make sure these get done is to do it during supervision or at the very end of a supervision meeting. And so you'll put in the information, you'll put the week number, the start date, and then you'll click on which competency, and then also just a brief review of what was talked about. Don't put any HIPAA um, identifying information in here. Maintain confidentiality for your clients. This can be very minor details. It's not so much for me to see what's being discussed, it's more for student and supervisor to know what's being discussed week to week and to track. And so maybe, 5 weeks in, you'll say, what was it that we talked about that second week that we had said we were going to do? It allows you to then go back and review it. So it's less for me to see the content, more for you. For me, I really just need to see that students are thinking about the competencies that are being covered, and then also that they are indeed getting that 1 hour of weekly supervision. And once students sign off on this, then this will go into the supervisor's log for them to sign off on. Okay, so that's a lot of logistics. I'm not a fan of tech stuff. So for me, that's a lot of tech stuff. And so if anybody could just unmute yourself, supervisor or student, what do you think makes for a successful field placement experience?
Something that I would say is it makes it successful experience would be having a supportive supervisor that you feel comfortable talking to. Because sometimes, if the working relationship isn't solid, you may not feel comfortable to actually discuss where you're struggling.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Jesse. How about others? And I was trained in psychodynamic clinical therapy, so I can get real comfortable with silence. So who's going to be brave?
I was gonna say a curiosity, so always asking questions and assuming the best of each other, and even asking questions you don't think you need right now would be helpful in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much, Zoe. I love that piece about asking questions. It's okay to be curious for our students. You are students. You don't have your MSW yet. You're not expected to be experts. Even when you graduate with your MSW, you're not expected to be experts. And so definitely ask questions. Don't feel like it's a dumb question. I know students are always so afraid to ask questions because they're like, well, I should already know this, or it's a dumb question. Ask it. We're here to support you. And we don't want you out there lingering in left field having a question when we could answer it real quickly for you. So maybe it's something that you were told to do. Something for your internship, but you don't know where to find the file, right? Like maybe it's on the computer on a shared drive and you could spend an hour looking for it. But if you just ask and it's something that we thought, oh, we just didn't think to tell you where it was in the rush of things, just ask. It could be something that saves you tons of time. We don't necessarily want you spending a bunch of time doing something that we could easily answer for you. Sometimes we'll want you to struggle a bit in kind of critical thinking and how to address clients and all of that. But if it's something that's more logistical, definitely ask. We don't want you out there struggling. How about from a supervisor? What do you think makes a good experience?
I have a response. I feel like as a supervisor, it's really important to role model what work-life balance looks like. So just ensuring that, our interns aren't already burning themselves out learning to be social workers, but encouraging them to maybe take time to practice self-care, maybe like reschedule a session if they are feeling overwhelmed, so that way they can provide the best clinical services for clients. I feel like that's really important. And that wasn't something that I learned like years ago as a social worker. I had to learn the hard way.
Same. Yeah, same. Thank you so much for sharing that. Absolutely. I also had to learn it the hard way, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to learn and to go through. And so I think that modeling that work-life balance is really, really critical. If you notice your students, so for example, I don't think, well, so there's some of you, if you're in private practice and you notice your student, has 8 sessions back to back and they're 45-minute sessions, that might be a little too much for them, especially in that first semester. And that's also a lot for even just a seasoned clinician. So it may be recognizing what's on their plate and how they're managing their schedule and say, that might be a lot. How about we kind of shift things? I had a supervisor, I think it was last year, who one hour a week for her internship hours, she told her student, I want you going out on a walk or something, like no screens, right? So you're not on social media scrolling, but go out on a walk, sit at your desk and meditate, whatever it is, for 1 hour. That was part of that student's internship. I know that's not feasible for all of them, but it speaks to that need to really focus in and teach students, how do you take care of yourself in this time? Um, we will talk a lot about self-care in our seminars. I talk a lot about it with students. I really try and focus on that. And I recognize as a student, it's really hard to find that balance because you have so much on your plate. And you may think at times when I'm talking about self-care, like, really, Sheila, how am I supposed to get an extra hour in my day of self-care or an extra 30 minutes? I recognize that this is an incredibly busy and stressful time in your lives, but know that your supervisors and myself and your other faculty will talk about it a lot. So that way you don't go into the profession having to learn the hard way. And I have had students, MSW students, where they finish and then they say, I'm so tired, I don't even want to go into social work anymore. And that is like the most devastating thing for me to hear. And so if you're feeling that way, please open up with your supervisor, open up with your peers, talk with me, talk with your faculty. That's not a position we want you to be in. Yeah. Okay, so students, how do you show initiative? We really want our students to show initiative and to show up and be their best selves. That's part of learning how to carry yourself as a professional. How do you do that?
I think a good way to do that is asking questions or like kind of just like jumping in and seeing things that need to get done once you are like kind of shown your responsibility and like role. And then kind of just running with it. So
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Destiny. Yeah, if you see a gap, see if it's something you can fill. If you hear a need, bring it up or say, like, I noticed this, or I've been part of this process and I thought of a way that maybe it could be run more efficiently. Have we ever thought about this? And you may learn that there's certain reasons for doing things certain ways, but maybe not. Maybe it's something where the supervisor says, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's implement that. And so asking those questions, and then jumping in. And that can start right in the beginning, especially as you're learning your role. A lot of times, some students, I see this more at the bachelor level, but even sometimes at the master level, supervisors are busy. They have a lot on their plate, and to then incorporate a student and go back and start training them, it sometimes takes a little bit of time for them to adjust schedules to make that happen. And so a student should never just be sitting at a desk wondering what to do. There's always policies you can read. There's always manuals you can read. There's always journal articles that you could be reading about best practices and working with your client population. It's really taking that step and saying, I'm going to do everything I can to learn as much as I can and to help the agency as much as possible. How about supervisors? How do you like to see your students stepping in and showing initiative?
I can go.
Thanks.
Um, I love supervising interns because I like to share all the cool things and theories and different modalities about social work. So I we don't know what we don't know. So sometimes students don't know what to ask, but feeling comfortable asking questions or the feedback I get a lot is like, I know I can make a mistake and come to you, and you're going to be like, okay, what did we learn from it? What are we going to do next time? So I think on both ends, like being a safe person for people to ask things to, but also students asking or saying, hey, I actually don't know what that means. What is that acronym? Or I want to learn more about this. How can I learn about this modality, or what opportunities do I have to further this skill? Because I'm always happy to tailor it to our interns. So I like to know, yeah, tell me what you want to learn, what you want to know more about.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Mindy. I use that phrase a lot. You don't know what you don't know. Because it's so true. Sometimes students are like, I feel like something's missing here, but I don't even know how to ask it because I don't know what's missing. And so yeah, you don't know what you don't know. And it's okay to say that. I don't know what I don't know. And I'm trying to learn. So where are the gaps here? And so yeah, just being really open and honest with your supervisors of what you're trying to process, of what's not making sense. If you feel like there's a gap in your knowledge, but you're not sure what it is, bring it up because maybe they can help you fill that. So yes, you don't know what you don't know. I use that a lot with my students, and it's so true. And so just being open and having that conversation, and also showing initiative in terms of what you said, Mindy. What do you want to learn? Supervisors really do try to take that approach where it's tailored for every student. And so what one student needs maybe is totally different from another student. And so just know that it's good for you to have those conversations with your supervisors of what do you want to do? Do you know what field you think you want to go into? Do you not? Are you totally unsure? And if so, that's okay. Um, I went into grad school thinking I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and that completely changed. And so it changes, and sometimes what you think you'll love, you try it, and then it's like, oh gosh, that's I'm not loving that. So what do I do now? And so feel free to have those conversations, professional development conversations, next steps, post graduation, all the things. Just let us know so that way we can tailor our approaches to meet your needs. So, in terms of growing professionally and using our code of ethics, and I'd love for a supervisor to answer this one first. What does it mean to grow professionally and use our social work knowledge, skills, and values in our everyday work? What does it look like?
This is Judy. I think just questioning and making sure that we're kind of checking ourselves every day.
Mhm.
I don't assume that I'm doing things right. I'm always, kind of questioning and making sure that I'm doing what's right for the kiddo that I work with, for the family, just kind of checking myself.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, and part of that too is checking ourselves for biases. We'll talk a lot about that this year, and you'll talk a lot about it in your other classes, intersectionality and what does that mean. But yeah, how do we check ourselves? We need to do it. And also, I think asking for feedback is part of that. Consulting with others if you run into an ethical dilemma, students get ready because you will run into them. I just had one with research that I was talking to a mentor about this morning. You'll run into them in every single area of social work. And so being able to lean into the code of ethics, that helps guide you so much. And then sometimes you'll need mentorship of, okay, I feel like I know how to kind of steer this direction in the right way, but I don't know how to have that conversation with somebody. Sometimes it's those brave conversations that are the hardest part, but they have to happen. And so, how do we have those? And a lot of that comes through mentoring and learning how to do that. And sometimes you may stumble and you may put your foot in your mouth, and that's okay. That's kind of goes back to what you said, Mindy, of like, how could I have done this differently? And so that's all part of it. I'd love to hear from a student. How do you think this could look in your kind of life as an intern?
I would say just taking criticism. Um, don't think of it as, I don't know, feeling bad about yourself, more so like, okay, I see what I can do. How do I improve? Because I know last year for me, or for most of us, being our first year of internship can be a lot. And so having these meetings or having these questions sometimes makes you feel a little dumb,
Mm.
but in the long run, it's more so for your benefit and your patients or students or whatever it is.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Eileen. Um, our goal is for you to not feel dumb at all. And so if you're feeling that way, that kind of goes back to having that open dialogue, having that brave conversation with your supervisor of like, when I heard that feedback, I felt totally clueless. Or if you are somebody where you struggle maybe with conflict and conflict conversations, let your supervisor know that. Maybe they can mentor you in that area. That's some people are pros at it and they love like de-escalation. I just heard a faculty colleague say that at our retreat the other day. They were like, I love de-escalation. I was like, not me. Those conversations are hard. And so being able to be honest with your supervisors and honest with yourself of like, how am I feeling right now? How am I feeling after that conversation? And going back to your supervisor and letting them know, I'm sure that's not what your intent was, but it made me feel really lousy afterwards. How do I process this in a more healthy way? And having those conversations and just being really open and honest. So thanks so much for that, Eileen. And then, so supervisors, we've been talking about this, offering meaningful supervision, help students see their blind spots. That can be really difficult for supervisors to point out sometimes, but it's so important for us as social workers, right? They're blind spots. They're called blind spots for a reason. And so sometimes we really need somebody to reflect those back to us. And so being able to talk about blind spots, being able to offer that meaningful supervision, kind of that feedback loop, which I think is on like one of my last slides, but it goes back to what you were saying, Mindy, of having that feedback and conversation and how do we do this differently or change the approach. And then students, it kind of goes back to what you were sharing, Eileen, of like how are you going to respond to that feedback? And being open about that with your supervisor. If you got feedback that was really hard for you to process, let your supervisor know. Have that conversation and maybe processing through it will help you kind of understand where they were coming from better and to not feel, we don't want you feeling bad about yourself. You are learners. And so that means there's going to have to be times where we offer feedback. We say, hey, I wonder if you've thought about this way, or I noticed you said this with this one client. Where did that come from? Right. And so asking those tough questions sometimes, but know that it's because we really want you as social work students to be ready to go into the field to work with marginalized populations. And so our job is to help stretch you, help grow, and increase that level of critical thinking and reflection. Kind of like Judy said, we need to constantly be checking ourselves. And then in terms of how do we address that personal or professional behavioral concerns, we have a field education manual that's really helpful. Supervisors, I do not expect you to read it because it is quite lengthy. That's part of our accreditation process is it has to be really lengthy because we have to cover everything under the sun. Students, there is the expectation that you read it. Read the MSW part. You don't have to read the BSW part. But that is available to you in Sonia as one of those documents. But really, the protocol is supervisors, we want you to have those open conversations with your students. If that's new for you, that's okay. Reach out to me. I'm happy to process things with you. Because again, I want there to be that supportive, holistic approach in addressing concerns with students, in supporting students to help them grow, to help them learn. And then supervisors, if you have those conversations and you're still struggling, come to me and let's process it. Let's talk about it. We're here to support you as supervisors also. And same thing for you students. If you're struggling with anything, reach out to me. Let me know. That's part of my role is to support both the students and the supervisors. Okay, so I'm just going to open the whole slide at once. So holidays and hours in field, this always is something that students hear and then a lot of times forget as time goes on. And same thing for supervisors. Know that your official start date is today. That means August 25th is the first day of field. That doesn't mean students, you have to be at your internship today if you're not there until Friday. That's okay. Don't stress. We want students averaging 15 hours a week every week for 15 weeks. So that means December 5th is a Friday of that last 15th week. We don't have students go into their internship the 16th week. In theory, the reason we did that is because we don't want students having to focus on their internship while also trying to finish up finals. Sometimes finals end up being due in this week, but we can't make it any shorter. So 15 hours averaging. And so what that means is it's not, well, I have to miss a week, and so next week I'll do 30 hours. It may be that you do a support group kind of on the fly. Maybe there's somebody out, a staff member out, and you're able to fill that support group. And so maybe instead of 15 hours one week, you do 17. Okay, so you can flex that next week if you need to, if you want to. That always has to be a discussion with the supervisor. Um, there should never be assumptions about schedule. Always have that open dialogue between student and supervisor. So at the end, we want students to have a minimum of 225 hours for the fall, 225 hours for the spring, first and second semester. Most students will go over that 450 hours. So I stress that because sometimes students will hit that 225 mark at like week 13 and then say, well, I'm done. Students are not allowed to finish their internship early. We want you averaging those 15 hours through to the very end of week 15. So please know that there is no finishing field internship early. We don't allow that. That's part of the accreditation requirements. That's part of, you have assignments in your other classes that require you to reflect on internship experiences. We really want students in their internships while they're also in their classes. And so please know students may not finish their internship early. You get a nice long winter break. You'll also get a spring break. And so know that there are breaks coming, but we really want students in their internship, minimum of 15 hours a week every week. This is kind of jumping ahead, but the question always comes up. So students are not required to be at their internship during the spring break. They get that week off. And so that still comes out to 15 weeks for that spring semester. The spring break is kind of brought into the fold with that. So it still measures out to 15 weeks. So students don't have to go into their internship for spring. Now, for students who are placed in schools, that can be a little complicated because usually the school's spring break is different from NAU spring break. And so that's a conversation between student and supervisor. So students, you can say, well, I'm going to take my spring break, or maybe your supervisor wants you to take your spring break when the school takes it, right? Because they're not going to have students there for you to see during their spring break. So that means then that you would be at your internship during the NAU spring break and you would get the school spring break off. So you kind of have an option between NAU spring break versus the school spring break. And I really ask supervisors to have that conversation with students early so they can plan for that. So that just means that you'll have some flexibility there for those of you who are in schools. Just know that if you take the spring break when your school is taking their spring break, you'll still be in your classes and you might have assignments due. I don't know. It all depends on what classes you're in at that time. But just know that you kind of have the option of either NAUs or the schools, and that's conversation to happen between the student and the supervisor. If you take NAUs and not your school spring break, that could become difficult because there won't be students there for you to see as clients. But sometimes there's like a macro project. Maybe sometimes the school is really wanting to get a support group off the ground and you can do the macro work from home. That's okay. So just have that conversation. No front loading hours. That's just me saying, again, students have to go all the way through to the very end of their internship. And so you can't finish at week 14, you can't finish at week 13. And I know I'm stressing this, and that's because every single year I have a handful of students say, well, I finished, I'm done with my hours. And it's like week 12 or week 14. Unfortunately, I wish I could say, okay, that's great, but you have to be there until the very end. For winter break, and again, I'll go over this with students, but just so supervisors hear it too, winter break, so it's a long break. The first thing that I want to say is for students, especially who are doing more kind of traditional therapy and you see clients like once a week or once every 2 weeks, it may not be ethically appropriate for you as that client's therapist to be gone for that amount of time. And so this is a conversation to happen between supervisor and student early on. Again, so that way students can plan for their winter break, but students, you may not get to have the entire winter break off. You might need to check in. Maybe it's doing like an hour a week here and there or 2 hours so you can maintain that ethical clinical responsibility to your clients. Um, so that's the first thing I want to say with that is that our responsibility has to be to our clients. And if you're seeing a high needs client every other week, to be gone for like 6 weeks may not be okay. And so I always let the supervisors guide that conversation. I don't want students, we talked about work-life balance. I don't want students having to work their full hours their entire winter break, but maybe it's seeing a client once during that winter break or a couple times during that winter break to maintain their clinical and ethical responsibility. Um, Sometimes a clinician can step in and do kind of like an impromptu session so that way the student can have the time off. Again, I let the supervisors manage that because as the supervisors, you know what the needs are of the clients your student's going to be seeing. And maybe winter break comes up and the student has a really light caseload and they get to take the whole break off. Fantastic. But again, supervisor guides that conversation and guides the students through that. I do ask that it happens sooner rather than later, so that way the students can plan if they want to travel, if they need to go see family, etc. Also, during the winter break, students can intern up to 50, they can intern however many hours they want. I do want students taking that as a break with that caveat of letting the supervisors guide how much is needed for their clients. But students can count up to 15 hours from their winter break towards their spring hours. So students can't front load. And so they can't say, well, I'm going to take the 15 hours for my winter break and take this whole week off. That's not what that's for. It's more so if a student has to call out sick in spring, you have some cushion, you have a bit of a buffer. So you're not then having to scramble trying to make up hours from calling in sick. Also, towards the end, a lot of students will start doing interviews and may have to miss a couple of internship hours in the morning or in the afternoon to go on a job interview. Those winter break hours, again, offer some cushion to give you flexibility to do that. So we still want you managing, 15 hours a week. It's not saying, well, I did 15 over winter break, so I can do 14 hours a week moving forward. We still want you doing that 15 hours on average, but it offers some cushion if something comes up and you need to call out. The other complicated piece is students who have their internship days on days that are observed by NAU, and this is an NAU policy, can count those hours off. So we have Labor Day, which is a Monday, we have Veterans Day, which is a Tuesday, and then we have Thanksgiving and the day after, so Thursday and Friday. Say a student has their internship for 5 hours on a Tuesday. Well, Veterans Day is an NAU observed holiday. It's a Tuesday. So NAU says students can't be required to go into their internship that day because they fall under the scope of NAU. So students can count, if they do 5 hours on a Tuesday, typically, they can count up to 5 hours holiday hours on their timesheet, and that counts for their 15 hours that week. Maybe their internship is on a Thursday and they tend to do 8 hours on a Thursday. Well, Thanksgiving Day is off. They can count up to 8 hours on a Thursday as their holiday hours. Some schools and agencies will observe additional holidays. Unfortunately, students can't count those as hours off. So maybe it's going to be like the office is closed, nobody's here, so the student can't come in. Maybe there's a way to shift hours that week, or preferably, the student can do some macro work at home. And the reason I say preferably is because a lot of our students do have families, do have work that they also are juggling. And so to try and shift internship hours for certain students may not be feasible. And so if they can do a macro assignment from home, like working on doing research to get a support group going or working on revising policies and finding what's outdated, those type of things can happen from home, and that's perfectly okay for students to count those. That's a lot of information and there's like different caveats and asterisks in there. So any questions from anybody before I move on from talking about hours? And again, just unmute yourself because I can't see you. Okay. As questions come up, students, I know you're kind of being asked to drink out of a fire hose right now. So if you think of a question later and think, oh my gosh, I know we covered this, but I don't remember, just ask me. That's okay. I try to give students reminders also, especially as things like holidays are coming up and remind them. I think the key thing to remember, though, for supervisors and students is students really need to maintain their internship through to the very end of the semester. Okay, so whoops, just a brief overview of assignments. So we talked about the student acknowledgement of responsibilities. That's in Sonia. The learning agreement, that's also in Sonia. Students, you have your first seminar next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, depending on your group. We'll talk a little bit about the learning agreement more there. If you can go into Sonia and review it beforehand, that would help tremendously so that way you can come to seminar with questions. And then we have weekly journals. And there's 11, but not really 11. There's 10. And the reason I say that is because at some point in the semester, students get a freebie. So students, all you have to do is go into Canvas and the little text box, say freebie week, and then I count it as counted and you get that week off. There's certain journals that you'll see in your syllabus that you have to do, certain prompts. So the first one is an introduction prompt. You have to do that one. There's one, and I forget exactly what it says, but there's one that has to be done for journal 9 or 10 or 11. And then there's also a prompt talking about working with clients who have disabilities. And so you'll also need to do that prompt. So you can't excuse yourself from that prompt. So there's 3 prompts you have to do. But all the other ones, you can choose a week to get a freebie and you don't have to do a journal that week. That comes in really handy if you end up sick. And I will say that even the healthiest of students, because there's so much going on in your life right now, students tend to get sick, especially during midterms and then towards the final. So midpoint of the semester and then towards the end. I see a lot of students get sick. And so that can be a good week. So hang on to that freebie. Also, those times are also when times are very stressful because you have bigger assignments due in your other classes. So it's helpful to hang on to it. Sometimes a family emergency happens, and so you'll need to use it for that, and that's okay. So there's really 10 journals. We don't have journals due on weeks of seminars. We have 4 seminars. And then a timesheet is due every week, and your supervision log in Sonia is due every week. So for supervision logs, you'll see that it says Sonia and Canvas. What that means is you will do your supervision log, students, in Sonia. Once you sign it, I want you to take a screenshot of it and upload that into Canvas for me. And that's how I will be marking off that you have done your supervision logs. Unfortunately, Sonia doesn't communicate with Canvas. And so Canvas can't see that you already did it in Sonia. I wish it did. And we've asked for that, but the Sonia powers that be say that that's not possible right now. So just take a screenshot after you've signed your supervision log and upload it. Timesheets, again, I want students doing them every single time they're at their internship. But in Canvas, so where your grades are kept, I only mark them off on a monthly basis. So if it's like September 30th and you say, but I submitted all of my hours for September and Canvas doesn't say it, that's okay. I check them after the whole month is over and then I go through and check the hours and mark that in Canvas. But you as the student should be inputting that every time you're at your internship. Seminars, we have 4 of them. Seminars are over Zoom, and the links are posted on the syllabus. They're posted in Canvas. I highly, highly, highly recommend getting those on your calendars, your personal calendar, your paper calendar, your fridge calendar, your internship calendar, work calendar. Get them on your calendars and set alarms. They only happen once a month. They're not like a set, like it's the second Tuesday of the month. Some of them vary. Get those calendars set up now because when you forget to attend seminar, that's considered a major assignment that you're missing. And so not only will you not be excused from a journal that week, you also will have a makeup assignment that usually is about 5 pages. Don't miss seminars. They tend to be students' favorite part of this course because it's your opportunity to connect with other peers, to share struggles maybe you're having to share wins from the internships. You really want to be there for the seminars, and you really don't want to miss the seminar because of the makeup work that results. And it usually don't have very much time to do that makeup assignment. Um, we will have 3 field visits. So an initial, which will be within the next couple weeks, and that's between me, the student, the supervisor, and if there's a task supervisor, the task supervisor. I would love for them to be there too. A midpoint, which usually happens towards the end of November, beginning December, and then a final visit, which will happen end of spring semester. Supervisors, you will complete an evaluation of your students' performance in field. Midpoint, that will come out to you in an email October 27th. So you will get that in your email. I'll have students prompt you and say, hey, did you get that? Or I'll send an email out. But you will get that emailed to you October 27th. That's a Monday. I ask that those be completed before that midpoint visit and approved or talked about with the student first too. So you'll complete the midpoint, talk about it with the student, go over it, and then it'll be ready and everybody will be on the same page for that midpoint field visit. Same process for the final field visit. The evaluation will be exactly the same as the midpoint. So the final one is the same as the midpoint. The midpoint really is to give us a benchmark to say, okay, what do we need to focus on in the final semester in terms of skills, opportunities, competencies? So it helps set the stage for that second semester of learning for the student. Okay, so that's the evaluations supervisors will be doing for their students. Again, if there's any concerns, don't feel like you have to wait until the midpoint or the final. Please have those conversations with the students or myself ahead of time. Journals, students, please email your journals to your field supervisor. For those of you who had your BSW with us, you don't need to CC me on those. I know a lot of times field supervisors at the BSW level will have students email their supervisors and CC the liaison. Your graduate students, I'm trusting you to do this. I don't need to be CC'd on those, so just send them every week to your supervisor. Supervisors, how you look at those is completely up to you. I don't dictate that for you. I remember what it's like being a field supervisor, and there's weeks that are just really busy and you just can't get to it. That's okay. If you can get to it, it is really helpful to see kind of where your student is at. But again, I leave how you manage that and how much you read over those up to you. So weekly assignments are the journals, and again, it's really 10. The supervision logs, because we really want students getting supervision every week with their supervisor, timesheets. There's the monthly seminars. In the spring semester, there will be a code of ethics assignment. It's kind of we've revamped the assignment, and I think it's a lot better than it used to be. It's less work, but I think more insightful for students. So we'll have a code of ethics assignment. Students, we really want you continually checking in with your learning agreement. I think a lot of times the learning agreement, a lot of time and effort and energy goes into it at the beginning, and then it kind of falls off the radar and isn't looked at. Don't let that happen, because what you don't want to have happen is the end of the semester, the end of the academic year come around and you realize, oh my gosh, I was supposed to do a support group, or oh my gosh, I said I was going to do this. And then you're scrambling trying to get things done. Don't do that. Set up the learning agreement as something that you're checking in with at least every other week. And then know that it's fluid, right? Things change. Maybe the agency gets an amazing grant and all of a sudden you have different responsibilities than what was initially thought of. That's okay. It can be fluid and changed. But the learning agreement is completed at the beginning to the best of our knowledge to the information is that we have right now. And then we'll have the final evaluation in spring and then also the final field visit. Also, mostly for supervisors to know that in other social work classes, there's a lot of assignments that will happen that require the students to reflect on things that are happening in the internship. Students, we never, ever, ever, ever want you to disclose any type of confidential information about your clients. But you will be asked to reflect on different things, different learning opportunities from the internship, and you may be asked to implement a program at the internship. You'll learn about that in your other classes, but it's mostly for supervisors to know. The students may come to you with questions saying, okay, I have this assignment to do, but students should never email you an assignment and say, I was told this is for you to do. The assignments are the students. I've had students do that, and I'm like, no, 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 no. The supervisors have enough on their plate. It's not them in the program. So students know that it is up to you to take that initiative, and the sooner you get that assignment and talk about it with your supervisor, the better. The better they will be positioned to help you process it, and to talk through it. Do not procrastinate those assignments because then that becomes a burden on the supervisor. Okay, so logistics, the field education manual I've mentioned, it is in Sonia. Supervisors and students should have access to that. It's in that right-hand link where it says documents that I showed you. It includes information about professional behavior and social media, but I will just say, supervisors, some of your students, this might be their first time ever in a professional role. I highly encourage you to talk about what professionalism looks like at the agency. Be very specific about what's appropriate and not appropriate about dress. And students, your personal cell phones and social media should not be out during your internship unless you need to be available in case your kid's school calls or something. But you should never be on social media at your internship unless you are like boosting something for the actual agency that has to go on social media. Please, please, please heed to this. I've had lots of issues, again, more at the BSW level, but also at the MSW level with students not knowing what to do and not knowing how to take initiative. And so kind of go into the comfortable bubble of social media. Please don't do that. So again, supervisors ask you to be really clear about, screen use, computer use, etc., what's appropriate, what's not, and then also dress and time. The clearer you are with the boundaries, the better the students will be positioned. Students are covered by professional liability while enrolled in field. That carries over during that winter break. I often have supervisors ask me, can the students come in? Are they covered? They are covered. So they are under professional liability insurance with NAU. Can assignments be worked on in field placement? So again, this kind of goes back to for those students who have had their BSW with us, sometimes that's permitted at the BSW level. I really don't want students working on their assignments when they're at the field placement. Field is for field and getting those learning opportunities and really stretching yourself and growing. The learning agreement, absolutely, that should be worked on at the field placement because a lot of that is going to be the students kind of coming up with initial thoughts and then consulting with supervisors and working out the details together. I think a lot with the learning agreement that students struggle with is you don't know what you don't know. And so that comes up a lot with the learning agreement. So a lot of consultation with supervision is needed. Other than that, timesheet, fine, that shouldn't take too long. Supervision logs, yes, but journals, that really shouldn't be happening during the internship. However, for students do have that monthly seminar. That may happen when they are at their internship, and I just ask that they be excused. It's once a month, it's 1.5 hours. And so I just ask that if they are at their internship during that time, that they be excused from internship so that way they can participate in that. You heard what happens when they don't. So it's a heavy lift for students when they miss seminar. And so that also for students who aren't at their internship during that time, those 1.5 hours add up, and those also can count towards internship hours. That's just something that needs to be talked about with the supervisor in advance. So those can be counted on your timesheet. Again, communication is key. If there's ever any issues, any concerns, supervisors, students, etc., please reach out and let me know. I know I say it a lot, but I really mean it that I want it to be a positive experience for everybody involved. And so the sooner we address any type of concerns, even if it seems minor, the better the situation tends to be. And so again, the supervision logs, timesheets, and learning agreement will all require the supervisor's signature. I'll be sending out this PowerPoint. If you want the link to the recording, I can send that to you as well. But just know that it is available to you. And so, yeah, it's a lot of information, and I know that. And so the video on Sonia also will help a lot. It's not a general Sonia staff that put it together. It's our field education staff who did that. And so they really walk you through the steps of how to get to timesheets, supervision logs, etc. Okay, so we talked about this. I think I stressed this enough in terms of concerns. Late assignments. So this is more for students. And I'm just going to read it. And this is also in the syllabus. So late assignments and missing assignments do not demonstrate professional readiness for the profession. After two late or missing assignments, an automatic performance meeting will occur with me as your liaison. It's automatic. And it doesn't matter if they're a day late or a week late, they are late. And after two, and that includes supervision logs. And so that's why I say for students, once you sign your supervision log, take a screenshot of it and get it into Canvas. You don't have to wait for your supervisor to sign it. Sometimes supervisors are busy and they won't get to it until the week after. I want to see that you as the student submitted it on time. So get that into Canvas. Late and or missing assignments put your ability to earn a passing grade in jeopardy and may delay the anticipated graduation date. Frequent late or missing assignments may result in failing the course and a performance review with a social work faculty panel. So I can't stress this enough. Our goal is to get you to be a successful social worker. We are also kind of seen as gatekeepers, though, and that's hard because when we give you an MSW, we are signing off saying this student is now a professional MSW and can go out and work with marginalized, disadvantaged populations. That's a big responsibility. And so we really want to make sure students are ready for that. And so we are looking for professional readiness. We are not just the average degree where you go out and you can find any job afterwards. Social work is a professional degree, and you need to demonstrate that you can carry yourself as a professional. Now, taking a step aside, still ask questions. You're still in that learner role, but we expect you to show up and to complete your assignments in full at a graduate level. Failure to attend seminar, I talked about that. So just know that it is late or missing assignments. That includes not having your timesheets in. That includes not submitting your supervision logs. That includes a late journal, even if it's just a day late. That is considered late. And it goes over this a bit more in the syllabus, but once you are a working professional, you're going to have to submit court reports sometimes. You're going to have to submit documentation for your client meetings. There are certain things that you have to meet those deadlines. If you do a mandated report, you have a deadline for that. And so this is us trying really hard to get students ready to work with populations who you have a huge responsibility as a social worker, and our code of ethics aligns with this, where we need to be working at our best professional selves. And so this isn't to kind of like shake a finger at students and say, you better do this. But please understand, this is because we are really trying to get students ready to go out and work in the world as professional social workers. So a lot of times students see pass fail and they think, oh, I can submit my assignments late. I'll pass. Not necessarily. I really believe in students carry, or not students, sorry, students too, but social workers carrying themselves to the highest degree of professionalism and being leaders in every role that they take. And so I really stress this, and I really want my students to graduate feeling ready to go into the profession and not scared. You may be intimidated, that's normal, but I want you to be as ready as possible. And this is part of that stage. These are the educational competencies. I will share that recently our educational guidelines have changed a little bit. They include more language about DEI, and we continue to teach that, and we will continue to teach that. Even if the federal government comes banging on our door, we will teach that because that is in alignment with our code of ethics. So just know that we are continuing to teach these competencies. We are continuing to get students to be able to address all of these competencies. The midpoint and final field evaluation supervisors that you'll do for students all have different activities and behaviors that fall within these competencies. So I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, especially within our government. And so we just want students and supervisors to know that we are not straying away from our professional code of ethics. We are adhering to them and will continue to do so. So nine, I shared the competencies are all of the different areas that the evaluation will be broken into. It's broken into 9 different areas. Each one is a competency. And so just for supervisors to know, the email that you get with the midpoint in the final field evaluation does not come from me. It comes from this generic um, email that's like at Sweep Instruments or something like that. So it will look like this. And so sometimes it can go to the junk folder. And this is why I have students prompt their supervisors, hey, did you get that email? Because a lot of times it will go to junk. For those of you in the hospital, I have quite a few of you in the hospital setting. Um, Although I don't know if FMC's firewalls are as strong as others, but I've had students at like Honor Health, Banner, where they just cannot get these emails. And I have to send it to a personal email of the supervisors because the firewalls are so strong, because it is a generic email and it catches it as spam. So just know this is what the email will look like. It will have a link for you as the supervisor. Supervisors, for those of you who have multiple students, pull up the email that is specific for your student that you want to assess. So at the very top, the subject line says NASW or NAU MSW midpoint field evaluation 4, and then it's gonna, whoops, it'll have the student's name there. Um, you want to click on that email to evaluate that student, because each link that's in that email is unique to that student. So you can't use the same link for every student because it is unique for each specific student. If you don't get these emails, if your student said, no, no, it was emailed, you should have got it, and you're like, it's not here, email me and let me know, and I will get it to you. We'll find a way. So this is what, for those of you who are new supervisors with us, this is what the evaluation looks like on the computer. It's all done on the computer. And so this is just an example under competency 1, demonstrating ethical and professional behaviors. It has you rate the student on a Likert scale of 1 to 5. 1 is like not competent, 5 is like they're a rock star competent. Our goal is to get students to at least a 3 by the end of the spring semester. A 3 is saying they are competent in this area. And again, competence is it's interpreted a lot of different ways, but basically it's not saying the student is an expert. I don't know if any of us could say we're experts in any of these areas. We're ongoing learners, but a 3 is saying the student can get this done. They may need to ask somebody in consultation, they may need to seek supervision, but they know how to do this. They can do it. And so just know that the scale is a little confusing. Every supervisor rates and has their own internal rating scale, different from others. So I'm not going to pull up Billy Sue's, evaluation and compare it with Najoni Shaw's and say, well, Najoni did really great in these areas. What's going on with Billy Sue? We're not going to do that. We just look at them as an aggregate. And then in the visits, I look individually at the students and we have a conversation. So please don't worry about how your grades or scale is being impacted by others or how it measures up to others. Just use your own internal grading scale, and that's perfectly fine. What I tell supervisors and students is the 1 is saying, like, they're not competent at all. I don't think any of our students are a 1 or they wouldn't be in the program. So what you can do, there's not a not applicable category. So I think all of these are applicable under competency 1 right away. But there's going to be some like competency 4 is research informed practice and practice informed research. Maybe your student hasn't been able to tap into that competency yet, and you have plans for that in the spring semester. It's okay to mark it as a 1. And in the comments box, just say items with a 1 equal NA. That's perfectly okay for you to do that. It's not going to look badly for the student marking them as 1s. And so just know that that's kind of how we guide our supervisors because they won't let us have an NA category. I don't know why, we just can't. So use the 1s as your default NA. That's perfectly okay. And it's not going to hurt the student scores. So students don't panic if you see a bunch of 1s. It's okay. Remember this conversation. 1s are okay. Okay, so just again, we will initiate the process as the field education office. I will have students prompt you as the supervisor saying, hey, the email went out. Can you check to make sure you got it? If not, let's reach out to Sheila so she can figure out what's going on. Make sure you check your junk mail or spam folder. Again, I mentioned hospitals sometimes have really strong firewalls. Those tend to be the agencies where supervisors sometimes don't get them. And so we get creative in how I get them to you. We'll figure it out. And again, I ask that the evaluation be completed before our midpoint and final field visits and reviewed with your student. A lot of liaison supervisors will give the link to the student and say, you rate yourself first, or they'll print it out and say, student, rate yourself first. Then the supervisor meets with them and then kind of adjusts scores and they have a conversation. Usually it's adjusting scores up. Our students tend to be very modest in how they score themselves. And so supervisors help kind of bring some balance to that. You can also sit together in a supervision meeting and go over it at the same time. How you do it is up to you. Every supervisor has their own style. Just know that at the end of it, so it will have you do all of the Likert scale, and then at the end, it will have you as the supervisor put your name. And you need to get the student's permission to put their name in, saying that it was reviewed with them. It doesn't have to mean that they agree with all of the scores. It just means it was reviewed with them. So you'll put your name in, then the students, and then you hit submit. If you can't finish it all in one sitting, which oftentimes you can't because you're all extremely busy, there is a save button. Just make sure you hit save, because if you don't save it, you'll lose everything. And so just make sure you hit save. Submit is for after your name and the student's name have been typed in at the end. Okay, I think I talked about pretty much all of this. We'll spend time in our seminar going over the learning agreement. Students, again, please pull it up in Sonia and look at it first. I also have, it's on an old document, old format, but I have a sample in your Canvas shells within one of the first modules. Make sure you look at that because it's different in terms of formatting, but same idea in terms of the learning activities that will come with it and what you could put throughout the different competencies. So you'll want to look at that to give you some ideas. I think, again, the learning agreement, the biggest struggle is you don't know what you don't know. And so that is the biggest hurdle with the learning agreement. And so it really helps to look at it before our seminar. If you can have a conversation with your supervisor beforehand, that's great. It may not happen. That's okay. So this, again, I'm going to be emailing out this PowerPoint to everybody. These are just some areas that I encourage to be part of a conversation between students and their supervisors in that first week. It's a lot of what we've already talked about. It's just kind of going back over it. It's talking about logistics. What if a student's sick? What if there's snow and they can't get to their internship, etc. And so this kind of goes back to that feedback loop that goes along with what Mindy was sharing earlier. You know, you do something and then you reflect back. How did that go? Did it go well? Did it not go well? If not, how could I maybe have addressed that differently? And asking students really encourage you to ask your supervisor, what would you have done differently? Or I wasn't sure about this approach. I'm not sure how it went, but I'm curious how others would have handled that. If you have rounds, that's a great place to ask those questions. And don't just ask your supervisors. I really hope that students can become more integrated into their environments of the internship and start getting to know other people, because that's really where students start to feel comfortable and where they feel like they can really grow is when they're integrated into the setting and not just paired with the supervisor. Some settings that's not possible. Maybe it's just the supervisor there. That happens. But if there's other team members at play, students really encourage you to go out of your comfort zone, introduce yourself, let them know when you'll be there, kind of what your role is, get to know others at the agency, because that's going to help you feel a lot more comfortable there as you go there for the next, 9 months. So I went over this. I think I stressed it enough. Students cannot finish their internships early. They must go through the end of week 15. They'll have the dates in their syllabus. Students, you have a course outline and schedule towards the end of your syllabus. It has all of the weeks and dates laid out for you. Remember what I said about holiday hours, but if you forget, you can, of course, email me because I know it can be a little confusing. And at the end, you should have a minimum of 450 hours at the end of spring. Don't feel like you have to do that every semester. At the end of spring, you'll want to have a minimum of 450. And again, most students go over that. I don't say that to say, like, let's see how well you show up. Are you going to do 20 hours a week? That's not what this is about. I want you to have that work-life balance, but I don't want students like counting every 5 minutes and then saying, well, I hit 225, I'm done. We want you to hold yourself as a professional, go through the end. That's the commitment that you have made to the agency and that NAU social work has made to the agency, that the students will be there until this time. So please maintain that. And then lastly, just a really big thank you to our supervisors, our task supervisors, our field supervisors. Again, none of this would be possible without you. And so the School of Social Work is so very thankful for you. I cannot stress that enough. I remember being a supervisor. It's really it's something that I loved and enjoyed. And I think that's how I learned that I liked working with students, and that's why I'm where I am now. But truly, we couldn't do this without you, and so we just are so appreciative. So any questions from anybody? Let's see if I can stop the